So we cut the grass down our path of the garden, and of course we cut the weeds over the onions. And so this is our compost area where Mark and the guys are, and we're going to layer it with this green, and then we're going to layer it with some of the brown, and then the foo. And you can see the laying hens are learning that when people are out here, that means food. So they want to get close. They came running. I wasn't fast enough with the camera, but they're definitely picking up where the tractor went and disturbed the dirt. So the guys will be laying this all around. Mark's waving at you there. Yeah. So I'm working on training up the cucumbers and gathering the cucumbers because I'm going to conserve them today. If the weather holds today, Dima is going to weed eat between the rows of the strawberries here because the weeds have gone nuts. They finished, so we didn't focus on them because we've got all this other stuff to do. And so we've harvested the garlic and the onions. And so the area on the far side over there we've gotten done, and there's some carrots there. But if we go and start pulling up these weeds now, it's going to pull up the plants. And this kind of happens in late June or late July and August all the time. And so this is where garlic was, and you can see that Dima started to weed eat here. And this will provide us a really good path for going down and getting the squash, which is on this side and on this side. And we've got 2 more rows over there. And so he'll cut them down so he can have these good paths to get the squash. And we're going to harvest all the squash today, because when you harvest it, the plant goes, oh no, I don't have any seeds, and it starts to produce even more. And so all of our animals eat squash except for the rabbits. Occasionally a rabbit might like it, but usually they don't. But we grind it up for the chickens, we grind it up for the turkeys, or the turkeys actually we slice it up because they like to peck at it. The geese and the turkey ducks we grind it up for, and of course we grind it up for the pigs. So a lot of this will get cleaned up, and we can go through and kind of cut the big weeds that are in amongst the squash, but we don't want to pull them. And we've just had weeks of rain off and on, and we start to get ahead, and the rain comes, and boom, the weeds come back. Kind of routine for this time of the year. And August and September should be pretty dry and pretty hot. So anyway, over in here with the cucumbers, you can see that we keep them weeded. The tomatoes, fairly weeded, although the guys, I wasn't here for it, they planted the potatoes almost in the middle of this, which means we can't walk down it and without hurting the plants and then pulling the weeds. So I think next year I'm just going to have them plant the tomatoes on the outside, but right under the trellis so that they grow up through the trellis, kind of like this plant has done here. I don't know if you can see that. And then we kind of train it back up like that, just like we do the cucumbers, so that as they have the weight of the tomatoes, they don't fall over. Here are our peppers, and you can see we keep them pretty well weeded. And we've got some that are getting ready to turn the reds and the oranges, so we need to get out here and harvest these. I've been looking at some recipes that we can do. Oh, there's a big weed in the middle. This is our okra here, and the flowers are coming, and we're just starting to see some of the okra form. So probably in a couple days I'll have to start harvesting a lot. And down here is a little bit more squash, but most of it is the patty pan squash, and we harvested a lot of it because I cut some up and put them in the freezer. But here it looks like we've got one growing. It's not quite in its little star shape, but this is all patty pan in here. And then we added a few more regular squash down here. You can see zucchini. Zucchini lasts a lot longer than the yellow or white squash, and that's good for us. Again, we're going to harvest all of it. I think Mark's going to do that with all the guys. This is our neighbors where they've planted raspberries, and they did plant a row right here on the edge of the garden, and their suckers started coming up into ours, and they realized that we don't always cut the weeds as fast as they would want, and so they sprayed poison and stuff and killed off their raspberries along this row right in here, which is fine with us. And this is where we had most of our red onions, and The guys didn't really weed as well here, and they didn't water as well here when it was really, really dry in May, so they didn't grow that well. But Mark went through and cut down most of the weeds, and then we picked up a lot of the onions that were popped out of the ground by the rake that came behind the tractor. But today he's going to take out the potato harvester, I think, and he's going to run through here, which will uproot a lot of the weeds, and any onions that are down in the ground that we don't see, they should pop right up. But it'll kind of prep this area. Again, this next section here is carrots, but not until about right in here. And I'll take you over here. So we kind of need to get all this weed-eated, but here you can start to see the carrots. And the carrots are doing really well. I weeded them and thinned them really well, and only probably in the past month have these weeds grown. And again, if we come through here and we start to pull them up, we'll pull up the carrots and break the carrots. So this is kind of one of those biblical things where you don't pull the weeds out because you damage the wheat. You know, you got to be careful about pulling out the sinners, you know, too much. I guess I'm faltering with that scripture. Forgive me. You know what I'm talking about. You don't pull the weeds out because it damages the harvest. Yeah, and so here is a bunch more squash, and you can see it's just coming in really big, and they're going to be harvesting all of it. And there's, I think, 5 or 6 rows here. Usually I would leave a path, but I wasn't here with this planting. I left to go help my parents move. So this is our home garden, and of course in our back garden back there we've got a lot of pumpkins, and we weeded them a couple times until the vines got too long and we didn't want to damage the plants. And of course the weeds have popped up, but now the pumpkins that are growing have good shade. They won't dry out and shrivel up. And we've got our corn back there. We've been taking some of the leaves for the rabbits, but when the corn is on the cob, we'll pull it out, husk it, and then let it dry, and we use those corn cobs for the rabbits again. So our big field, we do have some potatoes here. They're starting to dry out on the other side of all this squash. And then we've got our red beets at the far end. And the potatoes we'll be harvesting the first part of September here and in our big field. So it gives us about 4 acres, I guess, of potatoes. If I remember it's about 1 hectare. Maybe it's 3.5 acres. And then all of our barley in our other fields is done. So we'll be doing barley again. We've decided not to do wheat because there's a little bit more of the threshing of the wheat that you have to do. And the barley's much easier, and it does give a pretty good yield. So we're happy with that. But I hate seeing the garden like this, you know, because of all the work that we did and how beautiful it was for so long. But it's just the way things go. And after September, we'll pretty much just have beets and carrots in the ground, and then the squash and the pumpkin and the corn. Everything else would have been harvested. So right now, Ura was harvesting the cucumbers because I'm conserving them today, and of course I really try to get him to wear his glasses out here, but he doesn't. Those are huge. Those have been out here, and he's probably missed them for a week and a half when he should be harvesting every day. But that's okay. It goes to the animals. Nothing goes to waste. But I've been going through and training up the vines and pulling some out, so I need to go back through this side. And you can see some of our tomatoes are starting to turn red, so I'll be doing some tomato sauce, but a lot of this is just for salads, and I'll probably end up buying a couple 100 kilograms to do the Italian sauce and some of those other things. But I need to take inventory down in the cellar first to see what I need to do, because with only 2 guys this year, and over the 3, I think we had 4 at one point over the winter, instead of having a full house, we just haven't eaten as much of the conserved foods. And with 2 guys, we can kind of spoil them a little bit more with a little bit more meat and some of those other things. You know, it's kind of cool to have only 2 guys because we can spend so much more time with them and kind of address issues. But it means less workers. So one of the other things we have here is another row of squash. And then we have our cabbage. And we pull out cabbage for, like I made borscht. We've done some salads, but eventually a lot of this will go to the rabbits or to the pigs. And, you know, you can see, like we've cut this one here, and there was one here, but in here you can see a couple didn't make it. It's just kind of hit or miss, and we spray for the little white butterflies that turn into worms and eat, you know, but it's just a matter of use. And normally I would probably do 3 times this much, but with only 2 guys, we did just a little bit this year. So anyway, that's kind of a look at our garden.